And it is my distinct honor to introduce you to Dr. Hank Gardner, the Associate Vice President for Research here at Colorado State University. In this role, Dr. Gardner promotes interdisciplinary research in the university's strategic areas of research excellence, as well as internal and external research partnerships. Dr. Gardner also serves as a university patent officer and facilitates the interface between CSU and economic development and technology transfer activities. Prior to coming to CSU in 2001, Hank served for 25 years with the U.S. Army Medical Department. His Army career included 11 years on active duty in the Medical Service Corps, followed by 14 years as a Department of the Army civilian with the U.S. Army Medical Research and Material Command. Hank was the founding director of the U.S. Army Center for Environmental Health Research and ended his Army career as a scientific director of this center. Dr. Gardner received his Doctor of Public Health and Environmental Health from the Johns Hopkins University School of Public Health. His awards are far too many to tell you about, but include a Kellogg Doctoral Fellowship, the NASA Space Shuttle Achievement Award, military decorations including the Meritorious Service Medal and Expert Field Medical Badge, and the Defense Meritorious Civil Service Award. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Hank Gardner.
Thank you, Kathy. I often wonder, who's she talking about? But anyway, thanks very much. I appreciate it, and thanks very much to the organizers for including me in the meeting, allowing me to give you sort of a brief history of what land-grant universities are all about, and also what Colorado State University, the kind of cool role that I think we're playing in that legacy. So without further ado, the obligatory Tony Frank slide of Abraham Lincoln. But one of the great things, frankly, that's a unique American experiment is the land-grant university system, signed into law by Abraham Lincoln over 150 years ago. One of the things that some people don't recognize is that embedded within that language, the enabling language of the legislation, is the military. And so that's something that I think is valuable to remember when we start thinking about the importance of the land-grant university ethic. Our mission is kind of tripartite. It's education, engagement, service, and outreach. I'm going to talk to you, most of this meeting has been about the pointy end of the arrow here. It's about the after the service and veterans that come back to school, which is terrific. And I congratulate Jenny and Kathy and others who've put this program together at Colorado State University. I want to talk a little bit about the full spectrum of what we do with national defense, from early on through the middle of service to the ending stages of service. We have an Army ROTC program here and an Air Force ROTC program here that are, frankly, some of the nation's finest. We commission anywhere from 15 to 30 officers every year into the two services. And just a brief kudo to Colonel Jenny Pickett, who was currently the Yale Adult Learner Veteran Services Coordinator, but was the former professor of aerospace science and ran our Air Force ROTC program. But these guys and gals do some tremendous work within the community, and they're great citizens of Colorado State. I want to talk to you briefly about something I call the JFK continuum. Kennedy, early in his tenure, looking at trying to develop global stability and security, was talking about how do we win the hearts and minds of people around the planet. And early in his tenure as president, went to Fort Bragg and put the Green Beret, the distinctive headgear of the Green Beret, on the Army Special Forces troops. Also, as many of you may know, and for those of you that don't, please spread the news, the Peace Corps, one of the major architects of the Peace Corps was Dr. Maury Albertson of Colorado State University, who helped build that aspect of global peace and stability. We have a current relationship with the 10th Special Forces Group, and if you look at their motto, which is the Special Forces motto, it's freeing the oppressed. That, to me, is the continuum of global peace and security from special forces through the land grant. So what are we doing with 10th Special Forces Group? We're working with the surgeon's office. This is These are the Green Beret medical sergeants, 18 Deltas for those of you in the military who remember the MOS structure. These guys are phenomenal medics, and they get some of the longest training of any of the Special Forces soldiers. What they're required to do every 4 years is go for what's called medical proficiency training. And they usually go to a level 1 trauma, well, not usually, they always go to a level 1 trauma center for that 4-year cycle of training. What we did was we built, working with the surgeon's office out of Fort Carson, we built an opportunity for them to come to Colorado State University. These medics train and treat their own guys if they're injured, but they also treat indigenous populations, which you can see in this particular image. So what do they do when they come to Colorado State University? Well, they work as a medic in our triage unit at our Hartshorn Health Clinic. So those of you who may use Hartshorn, sometime you may have a Green Beret medic who's seeing you and helping treat you or evaluate you. They also work in our training room with our trainers, and they work with our athletes, and frankly, trust me, they don't get to touch an athlete without, a football player anyway, without Jim McElwain saying it's okay, and he's all over this and supportive. But it's great training for them. We just finished our 13th Green Beret medic who's just trained through here and had tremendous experience, he said, working in the training room, learning how to stabilize knees, ankles, shoulders, et cetera. It's a great opportunity, and the football players and the basketball players and the volleyball players love these guys too, so it's a great opportunity for us. And this actually may be expanding beyond 10th group to other special forces groups who may want to come through here and train with us. One of the great unique things about Colorado State University is we're the world's leaders in veterinary medicine. These medics, they also are trained in veterinary medicine. They spend a year getting not just a human medical training, but also veterinary medical training and dental training and laboratory training, all of which they train up here. So when these guys deploy, they'll often deploy with animals, so they need to take care of the animals with which they deploy. But they also can work with animals in indigenous populations when they go to various places. 10th group, for example, out of Carson, deploys to Africa now. They've just expanded their area of operational responsibility in Africa. And I can tell you that there are villages in Africa where it's really important what happens with the animal populations. And when they're working here at CSU, and here they're working in or one of them's working in our veterinary training or veterinary teaching hospital, they work with large animals, sheep, you see cattle, but also emus and camels and whatever comes through the veterinary teaching hospital. So they get that experience, which has been terrific. Eventually I'm going to find this button. The other thing I want to do is give you some examples now of some areas there at Colorado State University performs research, service, and engagement, and just give you a taste of it. This is by no means meant to be all-inclusive. I'm hitting just the tops of some peaks, not touching any of the in-depth activities. But I'll talk a little bit about environmental science, atmospheric research, and you can read the rest. So we'll go through these. We run the Center for Environmental Management of Military Lands. When I looked at this image, at first I thought it's going to be Halloween. It's like the tortoise that ate the Humvee, but I won't go there. But critically important for people when they deploy is to be able to train. And training requires land, and land requires opportunities to take care of that land. And Colorado State University has the Center for Environmental Management of Military Lands, CEML. And CEML, either currently or historically, has had people at those kinds of installations across the United States. This is roughly, right now, around 200 people, CSU employees. It's roughly a $30 million budget on an annual basis coming from the Defense Department, and you have CSU colleagues working around the nation taking care of these training areas, not just ecologically, but also cultural and archaeological resources. Atmospheric science is obviously a strong area of Colorado State University. The Center for Geosciences and Atmospheric Research was created about 30 years ago. It's a tri-service enterprise. Why would anybody care about how wet the soil is? Well, if you look at the bottom, you can see what happens if you don't understand trafficability of vehicles across terrain. So these also become targets when you get stuck like that. One of the things that our guys are doing is working with improving algorithms for satellite imagery, providing much higher resolution. And these products are actually provided through headquarters within the Defense Department to tactical people on the ground, and this is an example from Afghanistan. This is a new center that we just opened last summer. It's a beam lab. It does work with both visible and free electron lasers. It's mostly Navy-funded research, but it's new generation microwave, RF, free electron lasers, et cetera. Excuse me. And the top laser is one of the lasers out there. That laser, interestingly, sits on a benchtop and puts out the entire power output of the United States of America on a benchtop. It does it in a femtosecond, though, so it's really short duration pulses. Infectious disease is obviously a very strong suit of Colorado State University. Arboviruses are viruses borne by bugs. Zoonotic diseases are those diseases that affect humans and other animals. And then we also not just publish papers on this, but we also have a project or a facility in which we actually produce vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics. This is Brian Foy and a Senegalese colleague working in Senegal doing insect surveillance for infectious disease. And this work was in part funded by the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research out of the U.S. Army. You may be reading in the media something about MERS, the Mideast Respiratory Syndrome. This is a coronavirus that is actually within the last week has killed a couple more people in the Saudi Arabian Peninsula. One of the questions has been, the supposition is that camels may actually be a reservoir for this animal, or for this virus. So our guys, Dick Bowen and colleagues, have developed the capability out on the Foothills campus to effectively evaluate how does this virus amplify itself, and are camels really a host? And in fact, they are, and what we do with that information remains to be seen, but we have camels out on the Foothills campus that are assisting our graduate students working with this. And then finally, we have Biomark, our production facility for vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics out on the Foothills campus as well. Biomark has just received a $2 million subaward from the Defense Department to work on filoviruses. Two of the filoviruses are Marburg virus and Ebola virus. Ebola virus obviously is receiving a lot of attention currently. These are non-infectious viruses that we're working with out there. These are products that were developed by the Defense Department to create vaccines, and our guys are working on that. Original product that was produced out of that facility was an FDA-approved new TB, tuberculosis diagnostic skin test. This is another area of interesting research. It falls into the area of brain-machine interface, brought to us by our new Vice President for Research, Dr. Alan Rudolph. The exoskeleton on your left is something that is often used by people who are paralyzed to help them walk. This is a brand new area of technology development. Most of the time, these exoskeletons have been controlled by toggles or levers with the hands. The difference with this one is it's controlled by brain waves. So people trained can actually make that exoskeleton walk by thinking. And here in our 3D printing lab, we've actually created the skull cap that puts the electrodes in exactly the right place so that those brain waves can get picked up. The other thing that's kind of interesting about this is that by building pads into the feet of this exoskeleton and providing sensory input to other areas of the body, like the back or the arms or the chest, the brain actually begins to learn how to walk again because it's now receiving stimuli that make it think that that the individual is walking. This is interesting technology. You'll note on the left, that's a Brazilian flag behind that exoskeleton. This technology was demonstrated at the World Cup when the first kick was made by a paraplegic from Brazil who had trained to use this and went out and kicked the first kick at the World Cup this past summer. We're currently also working with the Defense Department to expand that, working with Craig Hospital, which, as many of you know, is one of the premier rehabilitation hospitals in the world. I don't want to talk too much about this because the author of this is sitting at that table and will throw something at me if I get it wrong. But this is Kathy Shelley's program and transitions people from veterans from original injury finally into college. And I want to make a comment that it's not just four-year colleges, it's also two-year colleges, it's also four-year or VOTEC schools, but it's also back into the community. How did you reintegrate back into the community is one of the great things that I saw with Kathy's program when we first started talking about it was how she actually works in the community to help people reintegrate that have been injured. This is the Warrior Transition Battalion. Maybe some in the audience today, I know there were yesterday. Colonel Aaron Termaine, who's the battalion commander down there, brought a whole bunch of folks up here. If you look at the domains on those flags, there are things like spirituality, psychology, social aspects, physical attributes. And if you take what they're doing at the Warrior Transition Battalion and run it against, again, a program that Kathy's doing called New Start, those domains look dramatically similar, which says we're actually serving a purpose with the functions of rehabilitating and bringing back our veterans. The other thing I wanted to mention while I'm up here is this is not unique to veterans. This is what we call, in the Defense Department, used to call dual use. This technology is good if you're a rural resident in southeastern Colorado. You don't have to just be a veteran coming back. So this is incredible technology and capability that's useful throughout the state of Colorado as well. And then to close the loop, something that Tony has done and leadership at CSU has done is working with the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation. This is a national foundation that provides scholarships to dependents of Marines and medics, Navy medics who've served with the Marines, and gives scholarships to their kids to come back to school. And I'm proud to say that Colorado State University is the single largest institution recipient of Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation folks as well. So we've talked a bit about that full continuum, that full spectrum. I also wanted to mention that there's a whole bunch of other stuff at Colorado State University that I'm not touching on that does touch this national defense mission. I've not talked at all about food, I've not talked about water, I've not talked about energy, and I've also not talked about extension, which is an incredible attribute of land-grant universities, which puts us in touch with our communities and our communities in touch with us. So you don't have to just be in Fort Collins to be a recipient of this kind of capability. We're not the only one. This is a national asset. Land-grant universities, every state has at least one. And then we work with our colleagues who are not land-grant universities. There's a tremendous, including the community college system, there's a tremendous amount that we can do for national defense. So with that, I'll say thank you and thank the organizers for having me part of this. Thank you to the veterans in the audience for your service. And appreciate Jenny, Mark, and Kathy for your willingness to have me be able to present this. Thank you very much.